When 117 Philippine Marines walked into Camp John Mack, 300 MILF rebels couldn't stop them for 24 hours. This is the story of how 117 elite soldiers found themselves pinned down, surrounded, and outnumbered by hundreds of entrenched fighters. For 24 hellish hours, they refused to break. Their objective was to spearhead an assault on a fortress that enemy fighters swore they would defend to the death. They were the Philippine Marines, and this is the story of their legendary assault that began the fall of Camp John Mack. Chapter 1. The Tinderbox. In the year 2000, the island of Mindanao in the southern Philippines was a powder keg. For decades, a simmering insurgency had pitted the government against armed groups fighting for independence. One of the most powerful of these was the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF. The MILF wasn't just a band of guerrillas. It was a shadow state with its own military and a network of camps that served as launch pads for their attacks. By March of that year, the situation exploded. After a series of violent clashes, the MILF made a bold and shocking move. On March 16th, fighters from their 303rd Brigade attacked and occupied the town of Kauswagan. They seized the town hall, took hundreds of residents hostage, and dared the government to respond. The message was loud and clear. They could strike anywhere, paralyze a town, and challenge the very authority of the state. The move infuriated then-President Joseph Estrada, who declared an all-out war against the MILF. This wasn't just tough talk. It was the start of a full-scale military offensive, codenamed Oplan Sovereign. The goal was to dismantle the MILF's network of camps and restore control over the region. At the absolute tip of the spear was the Philippine Marine Corps, a force famous for its grit and expertise in the country's toughest conflicts. Within this elite corps, the Marine Battalion Landing Team 1, or MBLT-1, had a reputation for being the best of the best. Activated in 1972, MBLT-1 was a hard-hitting, rapid deployment force you called when there was no room for failure. Leading these men was Lieutenant Colonel Ariel Querubin, a commander who was already a living legend. A highly decorated officer, Querubin was known for his calm under fire and his tactical genius. A leader who led from the front and inspired absolute loyalty in his men. The target assigned to Querubin and his Marines was a critical piece of the MILF's war machine, Camp John Mack. This was no simple outpost. It was the headquarters of the MILF's 303rd Brigade, the same unit that had just terrorized Kauswagan. The camp was run by the notorious Abdullah Macapar, better known as Commander Bravo. Commander Bravo was a hardened and charismatic guerrilla leader. Some stories even claimed he was a veteran of the Soviet-Afghan War, where he fought with the Mujahideen. What was certain is that he commanded a disciplined force of hundreds of fighters who knew the terrain and were fiercely loyal to him. Camp John Mack, located in Inudaran, Kauswagan, was their fortress. It was a heavily fortified complex with a network of deep trenches, reinforced bunkers, and machine gun nests. The defenders were armed with heavy machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and mortars. More than just a base, the camp was the nerve center for the MILF's extortion rackets in the area, bleeding local communities for an estimated 38 million pesos a year to fund their war. Taking Camp John Mack wasn't just a tactical mission. It was about crippling the enemy's finances and liberating the people they terrorized. The direct assault fell to Lieutenant Colonel Querubin and the 117 officers and men of MBLT-1. The odds were staggering. 117 Marines were tasked with attacking a fortified camp defended by an estimated 300 rebels. They were outnumbered almost 3-1, walking into the lion's den. Chapter 2. The 24-Hour Inferno. On the evening of March 18th, 2000, under the cover of darkness, the assault began. The 117 men of MBLT-1 pushed through the jungle, their minds fixed on their objective. They hoped to use the night to their advantage, but Commander Bravo's fighters were waiting. The moment the Marines were detected, the jungle erupted in a hailstorm of fire. Muzzle flashes from heavy machine guns tore through the darkness. Mortar shells rained down, and the distinct sound of rocket-propelled grenades echoed as they exploded among the advancing Marines. The advance came to a dead stop. The Marines were pinned down in a perfectly designed kill zone. The rebels were firing from a web of interconnected trenches and bunkers, making them nearly impossible to locate in the dark. With every move, the Marines were met with an overwhelming volume of fire from a numerically superior enemy who held every advantage. This is where a lesser commander might have ordered a suicidal charge or a full retreat. Querubin did neither. He knew a blind push forward would be a massacre, but falling back meant mission failure. Under the same intense fire as his men, Querubin made the decision that would define the battle. He ordered the main force to hold the line, dig in, and return disciplined fire to conserve ammunition. Then he called on his Special Operations Squad. This small, elite team had an incredibly dangerous job. Crawl through the darkness, get deep into the enemy's lines, and pinpoint the exact location of their bunkers to guide the Marines' artillery. As the squad vanished into the shadows, the rest of MBLT-1 endured the non-stop onslaught. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder, and medics crawled under a hail of bullets to tend to the wounded. Casualties were rising. The rebels were fighting with ferocious courage, and their ammunition seemed endless. Meanwhile, the Special Operations Squad moved like ghosts. One wrong move meant certain death. They crawled on their bellies, yard by agonizing yard, getting ever closer to the heart of the enemy's defenses. Finally, they were in position. Through night vision, they could see the layout of the camp, the main bunkers, the mortar pits, the command posts. They began radioing coordinates back to Querubin, who then orchestrated a symphony of destruction. He called in fire from the battalion's mortars and armored support. The night was shattered again, but this time by the concussive boom of high-explosive rounds slamming into the rebel fortifications. Bunkers were torn apart, and mortar rounds plunged into trenches, silencing machine gun crews one by one. It was a deadly ballet that lasted for hours. The main Marine line drew enemy fire, forcing them to reveal their positions, and the squad would call in artillery to take them apart piece by piece. The battle raged through the entire night, a constant, deafening roar. Low on ammunition and taking casualties, the Marines held their ground, inspired by the sight of their commander calmly directing the chaos. As dawn broke on March 19th, the battlefield was a smoking, cratered landscape. The rebel fire had weakened, but they were still fighting from what was left of their defenses. After hours of non-stop combat, Querubin saw his chance. He gave the order to advance. With a battle cry, the Marines surged forward, overrunning the battered landscape. They assaulted the remaining trenches with grenades and furious rifle fire, engaging the last defenders in brutal close-quarters combat. The sheer ferocity of the charge was too much for the exhausted rebels. Their lines collapsed, and Commander Bravo's men finally broke and fled, leaving their dead and wounded behind. The Marines of MBLT-1 stormed into Camp John Mack, clearing out the last pockets of resistance. The battle, which had raged for 24 brutal hours, was over. The headquarters of the MILF 303rd Brigade had fallen. Chapter 3. The Reckoning. As the sun rose higher on March 19th, the scale of the victory was undeniable. Camp John Mack, the nerve center of Commander Bravo's operations, was firmly in Marine hands. The ground was littered with spent shell casings and the grim evidence of the battle's human cost. As they swept through the camp, the Marines found a treasure trove of weapons and intelligence. The retreating rebels had abandoned rocket launchers, machine guns, and crates of ammunition. They also discovered maps and documents that exposed the MILF's operations and networks throughout the region. The capture of the camp was a massive strategic blow. It didn't just dislodge the enemy, it destroyed one of their most important bases for launching attacks and extorting the local population. The liberation of the coastal towns from the rebels' 38 million annual revolutionary tax immediately freed citizens from a crippling burden and cut off a key source of the insurgency's funding. This victory was a critical part of a larger, successful government offensive. The fall of Camp John Mack was a domino. Just 2 days later, other military units captured Camp Bilal, another major MILF stronghold. Over the next few months, the armed forces of the Philippines captured 15 major MILF camps in total. The assault by MBLT-1 was the bleeding edge of a campaign that broke the back of the MILF's military power. But the fight wasn't completely over. Humiliated by the loss, Commander Bravo gathered an even larger force, an estimated 600 rebels, and launched a massive counterattack on April 29th to retake the camp. The ensuing battle was fierce, but Army troops holding the camp, supported by heavy artillery, crushed the assault and forced the rebels to withdraw once again. This failed attempt only cemented the importance of the Marines' initial victory. They hadn't just taken a camp, they had broken the enemy's hold on the area for good. For his conspicuous courage, gallantry, and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, Lieutenant Colonel Ariel Querubin was awarded the Medal of Valor, the Philippines' highest military honor. His citation immortalized his leadership during the 24-hour firefight, praising his tactical brilliance under extreme pressure. By holding the line while using his special operations team to direct fire, he avoided a bloody frontal assault and systematically dismantled a superior enemy force. His actions that day became a textbook example of leadership and small unit tactics, and Querubin would go on to become one of the most decorated soldiers in Philippine history. The battle for Camp John Mack is a powerful testament to what a small force of highly trained, brilliantly led, and fiercely determined soldiers can accomplish against impossible odds. It was a victory won not with numbers, but with courage, discipline, and tactical genius. The 117 Marines of MBLT-1 walked into a fortress defended by 300 fighters, and for 24 relentless hours, simply refused to lose. They stared down superior firepower and mounting casualties to achieve a victory that changed the course of the war. Their success crippled a key enemy brigade, liberated thousands of civilians, and triggered a chain of victories for the Philippine military. More than that, the story of their stand has become a legendary part of the Philippine Marine Corps' legacy. It's a stark reminder that in the brutal math of war, the quality of a soldier can matter far more than the quantity. The heroism of those 117 men is etched into the annals of the Wall of Heroes, a powerful story of how true warriors, when faced with an overwhelming threat, don't count the odds. They just find a way to win. If you were inspired by the incredible courage of the Philippine Marines, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to see more stories of military history and impossible odds. And let us know in the comments what other legendary battles you'd like to see covered. Countless thanks for subscribing, liking, and commenting on our video. God bless us all.